This is Resonance 104.4 FM. Flippin' marvellous. How you doing? 'Tis I, Nick Hennegan, with another slice of literary London. Although I'm actually in Wales at the moment. Land of my fathers. Well, actually, land of my mother's, but don't worry about that. In a lovely little pub called the White Swan, which is in a place called Llannon. Nearest big city is Aberystwyth. And it's rather glorious. It's on the Dylan Thomas Trail, and we're going to be celebrating the life and work of Dylan Thomas next time. But there's a very special anniversary that we are celebrating today. Oh, we are. Not only on Resonance FM, but of course also on bohemianbritain.com. We are celebrating the life, the work, and the glory that is Alan Bennett, the British playwright, born on 9th of May 1934 in Leeds, Yorkshire, in England. Probably Alan Bennett's best known more recently for The Madness of George III, the film, made in 1991, and his play, and I think a film as well, called The History Boys, where he fearlessly scrutinises the British class system and the English sort of north-south cultural divide, which are both sort of chilling and also very, very funny. Alan Bennett attended Leeds Modern School. He gained a scholarship to Exeter College in Oxford, where he received an undergraduate degree in history in 1957. Oh, wow. His fledgling career as a junior lecturer in history at Magdalen College in Oxford was cut short after he enjoyed enormous success with the comedy revue Beyond The Fringe in 1960. Arguably one of the seminal comedy moments, certainly in UK history, possibly world history. It gave birth to all sorts of things like Monty Python's Flying Circus. He co-authored the show and starred in it with Peter Cook, Jonathan Miller, and of course Dudley Moore. The foursome played to packed houses in New York City, but of course Edinburgh and also London. So I'm going to share a little bit of this. This is a rare recording, and a glorious one, of Alan Bennett kind of doing his stuff with Beyond the Fringe. Enjoy!
First verse of the 14th chapter of the second book of Kings. And he said, "But my brother Esau is an hairy man, but I am a smooth man." And he said, "But my brother Esau is an hairy man, but I am a smooth man." Perhaps I might say the same thing in a different way by quoting you those words of that grand old English poet W.E. Henley, who said, "When that one great scorer comes to mark against your name, it matters not who won or lost, but how you played the game." But how you played the game. Words very meaningful and significant for us here together tonight. Words we might do very much worse than to consider. And I use this word consider advisedly, because I'm using it, you see, in its original Greek sense of consider, of putting oneself in the way of thinking about something. I want us here together tonight to put ourselves in the way of thinking about what we ought to be putting ourselves in the way of thinking about. As I was on my way here tonight, I arrived at the station, and by an oversight, I happened to go out by the way one is supposed to come in. and as I was going out, an employee of the railway company hailed me. "Hey, Jack," he shouted, "where do you think you're going?" That, at any rate, was the gist of what he said. But you know, I was grateful to him. Because, you see, he put me in mind of the kind of question I felt I ought to be asking you here tonight. Where do you think you're going? Very many years ago, when I was about as old as some of you are now, I went mountain climbing in Scotland with a friend of mine, and there was this mountain, you see, and we decided to climb it. And so, very early one morning, we arose and began to climb. All day we climbed. Up and up and up. Higher and higher and higher. Until the valley lay very small below us. And the mists of the evening began to come down. And the sun to set. And when we reached the summit, we sat down to watch this magnificent sight of the sun going down behind the mountains. And as we watched, my friend, very suddenly and violently, vomited. Some of us think life's a bit like that, don't we? But it isn't. Life, you know, is rather like opening a tin of sardines. We're all of us looking for the key. And I wonder how many of you here tonight have wasted years of your lives looking behind the kitchen dressers of this life for their key. I know I have. Others think they found the key, don't they? They roll back the lid of the sardine tin of life. They reveal the sardines, the riches of life therein, and they get them out, they enjoy them. But you know, there's always a little bit in the corner you can't get out. I wonder, is there a little bit in the corner of your life? I know there is in mine. And so now, I draw to a close. I want you, when you go out into the world, in times of trouble and sorrow and hopelessness and despair, amid the hurly-burly of modern life, if ever you're tempted to say, stuff this for a laugh, I want you, at such times, to cast your minds back to the words of my first text to you tonight. But my brother Esau is a hairy man. But I am a smooth man.
Brilliant. That was Alan Bennett, and from Beyond the Fringe, called Take a Pew. And, well, kind of rather glorious it is, isn't it, too? We're talking about the writer, Alan Bennett, who's still with us, fortunately. His diaries have been fantastic. I've read most of them. I also have a kind of a sort of a slight attraction to Alan Bennett in that the first play I was ever involved with was amateur theatre in Hall Green Little Theatre, God bless them, in Birmingham. I used to know a woman and I used to pick her up occasionally, and then someone said, come in to the theatre and look and have a drink, and then someone said, do you ever do lights? And I thought, I've never done lights, but I got involved, and that's sort of what happened really. That's how I got involved in theatre. And I always remember the first play I ever saw was Alan Bennett's Getting On. Yes, and there was a lovely scene. I seem to remember a line talking about the National Health Service being forced. The line was, the National Health Service was forced through the nicotine-stained teeth of half the nation. And I remember thinking, that was rather good, wasn't it? Yes. So, so Bennett with Dudley Moore, Jonathan Miller, Peter Cook, as I say, they appeared at the Edinburgh Festival in the satirical review Beyond the Fringe, which you've just heard. And I'm quite excited because I've just had it confirmed this week that I'm going to be at the Edinburgh Festival. So if you're at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival in August, then please do come and say hello or maybe buy a ticket. I'm doing a thing called the Edinburgh brackets, not London, close brackets, literary pub crawl, and we did it last year kind of as a last minute thing, and it was great fun. I also learnt to love a lot of the Scottish writers. I also learnt how much Charles Dickens owes to Edinburgh, he said mysteriously. And if you want to know more, then you'll have to come and see me at the Edinburgh Fringe. And of course, if you do come as a result of listening to this, please tell me that you're listening to Resonance 104.4 FM or bohemianbritain.com, and the least I can do is buy you a drink. Okay. Yes, because you are listening to Resonance 104.4 FM. It's Literary London. I'm Nick Hennegan. We're also on bohemianbritain.com, and we're celebrating the life and work of Alan Bennett, whose birthday it is this week. His first stage play, 40 Years On, was directed by Patrick Garland and actually starred none other than John Gielgud, which was in 1968. His second play, Getting On, which I've also mentioned, also directed by Garland and starred Kenneth More, opened in 1971. And Bennett had many television, stage and radio plays after that. And despite a long history with both the National Theatre and the BBC, Alan Bennett, and this is interesting if you're a writer listening to Bohemian Britain and Literary London, as you are at this moment, he never wrote to commission, which is interesting, Alan Bennett. Was it confidence or arrogance? I'm not sure. I quite love it, though. He used to say, I don't work on commission. I just do it on spec. If people don't want what I've written, then that's too bad. Well, of course, his other works for television include his first play for the medium, which was called A Day Out in 1972, A Little Outing in 1977, Intensive Care in 1982, An Englishman Abroad in 1983, and many others, of course. Perhaps his most famous recent works, though, off of the screen, was the 1988 Talking Heads series of monologues for TV, which were later performed at the Comedy Theatre in London in 1992. And a second set of 6 Talking Heads followed a decade later. Of course, he's also known for Lady in the Van, which was based on his experiences with an eccentric woman called Miss Shepherd. And she was a real woman. She lived on Bennett's driveway in a series of sort of dilapidated vans for more than 15 years. The play was first published in 1989 as an essay, in fact, rather, in the London Review of Books. And he writes regularly for the London Review of Books. They've not sponsored this, but I do read it occasionally. I like his diary entries in the London Review of Books. And in 1990, he published it in a book form. And then in 1999, he adapted it into a stage play, which starred, of course, famously Maggie Smith and was directed by Nicholas Heintner. Which was rather kind of glorious. He's done other stuff, of course, The Madness of King George for the cinema. Entitled The Madness of King George, the film received 4 Academy Award nominations for his writing, and the performances, of course, of Nigel Hawthorne and Helen Mirren. It also won an award for Best Direction. So the boy's doing pretty well. Then, of course, in the 21st century, The History Boys won 3 Laurence Olivier Awards in 2004 for Best New Play, Best Actor with Richard Griffith, bless him, and Best Direction, Nicholas Heitner again, having previously won the Critics' Circle Theatre Awards and Evening Standard Awards for Best Actor and Best Play. So the boy done good. I also quite like the fact for 40 years he lived on Gloucester Crescent in Camden Town in London, and in 2006 he moved a few minutes away to Primrose Hill with his partner Rupert Thomas, who's the former editor of the World of Interiors magazine. Bennett also had a long-term relationship with his former housekeeper Anne Davis until she passed away in 2009. So a lovely character. He was awarded the Commander, the Order of the British Empire, a CBE, in 1988, and in 1996 was offered a knighthood, which he declined. He's had a few health problems, but he's known for his comedy, and so that was, you've heard a smidge of Beyond the Fringe. Let's listen now to more comedy classics. This is Alan Bennett and The Bricklayer. It's called The Aftermath of War.
I'll never forget that day that war was declared. I was out in the garden at the time planting out some croissants. It was a grand year for croissants, 1939. I had some lovely blooms. My wife came out to me in the garden and told me of the Prime Minister's announcement of the outbreak of war. Never mind, my dear, I said to her. You put on the kettle. We'll have a nice cup of tea.
Put out that light! All over Britain, the humble little people showed the same spirit of courage.
Young men flocked to join the few.
Please, sir, I want to join the few.
I'm sorry, there are far too many.
I had a pretty quiet war, really. I was one of the few. We were stationed down at Biggin Hill. One Sunday, we got word Jerry was coming in, over Hastings I think it was. We got up there as quickly as we could, and everything was very calm and peaceful. England lay like a green carpet below me, and the war seemed worlds away. I could see Tonbridge Wells, and the sun glinting on the river. And I remembered that last weekend I'd spent there with Celia, that summer, and her playing the piano in the cool of the evening. Suddenly, Jerry was coming at me out of a bank of cloud. I let him have it, and I think I must have got him in the wing because he spiraled past me out of control. As he did so, I'll always remember this, I caught a glimpse of his face, and you know, he smiled. Funny thing, war.
Sir?
Sorry to drag you away from the fun, Perkins.
That's all right, sir.
War's not going very well, you know.
Oh, my God.
We are two down, and the ball's in the enemy court. War's a psychological thing, Perkins.
Yes, sir.
Rather like a game of football.
Yes, sir.
You know how in a game of football, 10 men often play better than 11.
Yes, sir.
Perkins, we're asking you to be that one man. I want you to lay down your life, Perkins.
Yes, sir.
We need a futile gesture at this stage. It'll raise the whole tone of the war. Get up in a crate, Perkins. Pop over to Bremen. Take a shufti. Then come back. Goodbye, Perkins. God, I wish I was going too.
Goodbye, sir. Or is it au revoir?
No, Perkins.
At the National Gallery, Dame Myra Hess wove her magic fingers inextricably into the heartstrings of London.
we're fighting the Germans. That's something you're going to have to work out later on.
That was the night they got Pithy Street. I'll never forget it. I was out in the garden at the time, planting out some watercress for our boys out in Eaps. My wife came out to me in the garden and told me the news. Thousands have died in Pithy Street, she said. Never mind the thousands of dead, I said to her. You put on the kettle. We'll have a nice cup of tea.
How grateful we were to the BBC in those dark days of the war, when every night at 9 o'clock, Alvar Liddell brought us news of fresh disasters.
Yes, it's Alvar Liddell, bringing you news of fresh disasters.
I never ever used to hear the 9 o'clock news, as I was always out in the garden, round about 9ish, planting out some carrots for the night fighters. But I do remember that black day that rationing was imposed. My wife came out to me in the garden, her face ashen in hue. Charlie, she said, rationing has been imposed, and all that entails. Never mind, my dear, I said to her, you put on the kettle. We'll have a nice steaming cup of hot water.
Then America and Russia asked if they could join in. And the whole thing turned into a free-for-all. And so, unavoidably came peace, putting an end to organised war as we knew it.
Well, we've done our best. Now it's up to the youngsters.
I wonder what they'll make of it.
Should old acquaintance be forgot and never brought to mind? Should old acquaintance...
The genius of Alan Bennett, the aftermath of war. We're celebrating the fact that it's his birthday, Alan Bennett. In October 2008, Bennett announced he was donating his entire archive of working papers and unpublished manuscripts and diaries and books to the Bodleian Library. And of course, when Jonathan Miller passed in 2019, Alan Bennett became the only surviving member of the original Beyond the Fringe quartet, which of course included Peter Cook and Dudley Moore. I quite like the fact that for many years he's owned a cottage in Clapham in the Yorkshire Dales, and I know from reading a little diary entry he made, he no longer cycles around London because he used to constantly cycle around London. It's a remarkable career and a remarkable man, and he got a special Tony Award, a Lifetime Achievement Tony Award, and a special Tony Award for his various works. And I think it's a life worth celebrating. Still with us, so if you're listening, Alan, then please, drop me an email. And if you're listening and you've got anything happening, then please also drop me an email. I'm actually in Wales at the moment. We're going to be celebrating the work of Dylan Thomas next time. I'm celebrating the fact that I've actually just discovered that I am going to be at the Edinburgh Fringe this year. As I mentioned, I've also been invited to Kansas. We're in Kansas no more, Toto. Yes, Kansas, to do an international literary pub crawl. So it's been a fairly full-on week for me, really. But if you've got anything happening, then again, as always, please do get in touch. You could get me at, now I've got my new, special email, nick nick@bohemianbritain.com. nick@bohemianbritain.com. If you've got anything happening literally in London or anywhere else, as I say, I'm in Wales at the moment, having a lovely time, then please do get in touch. It'd be nice to hear from you. And that's more or less all we've got time for this week. But thank you again for your company. And I hope to hear from you soon. So get in touch if you've got anything happening. Oh, of course, you can also still use the old one, radio@mavericktheatre.co.uk. radio@mavericktheatre.co.uk. And all it remains for me to say really is happy birthday, Alan Bennett. My name's Nick Hennegan. This is Literary London on Resonance 104.4 FM.